Hi, I'm Mary Kopczynski, the CEO of Regulators, and here's your update on this week's 12,262 regulatory alerts. The regulator of the week is the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. So the CFPB was created in 2011 under the Obama administration and Congress to assist with the fallout of the financial crisis. The goal was to ensure that Main Street has an avenue of protection against Wall Street. Anyway, this agency is no stranger to controversy, as there was a Supreme Court decision in 2020 when a company was appealing a CFPB decision, and they claimed they shouldn't have to follow the rules because the entire CFPB was unconstitutional because it only allowed the director to be fired for cause. Long story short, the Supreme Court agreed, saying essentially that the president, Trump at the time, had complete power to fire the CFPB director. But it also said that just because one clause was unconstitutional, it doesn't wipe out the entire agency. So the ruling stood. Well, here we are again. The Fifth Circuit just decided that the CFPB was unconstitutional because it's being funded by the Federal Reserve and not Congress. My prediction? The Supreme Court will either agree or disagree, but I do hope they follow Justice Roberts' logic in the previous case that if one clause is unconstitutional, it should only apply to that clause. But I mean, with this new conservative Supreme Court, who knows? The topic of the week is the United Kingdom. In 1 week, Liz Truss stepped down as Prime Minister, setting the record for shortest tenure ever, and also the new Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, was determined. Another interesting topic I've been following is Project Genesis 2.0 from the Bank of International Settlements. So, get this. The skunk crew of innovators have just put together 2 prototypes that demonstrate the technical feasibility of tokenized green bonds with IoT, Internet of Things devices that are tracking carbon credits at the actual physical source, so that you could set up smart contracts that move money based on the outcome of actual carbon. I thought that was pretty cool. Also interesting are the current discussions going on in Congress about the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA, and how it applies to the internet. So, for example, there's rules that if you run a movie theater, you can't reject customers for using a wheelchair or needing equipment or closed captioning. But right now, how would that apply to Netflix or Hulu or Disney Plus? Are those motion picture houses, and do they have the same obligation towards Americans with disabilities? Other cool but kind of disturbing innovations. In a recent study funded by the National Institute of Health, a team of researchers found AI models could accurately predict self-reported race in several different types of radiographic images, which is not actually possible for human experts to do. And these findings suggest that race information could be unknowingly incorporated into image analysis models, which could potentially exacerbate racial disparities in the medical setting. Similarly, the Fed put out a new study this week assessing racial discrimination in mortgage approvals. As you could expect, minority applicants have significantly lower credit scores, higher leverage, and are less likely than white applicants to receive algorithmic approval from automated underwriting systems. Coincidentally, to combat this, Fannie Mae is going to be using a new tool called a Special Purpose Credit Program to test ways to better credit such underserved groups, to help borrowers who can, for example, afford a monthly mortgage payment, but can't rely on other traditional sources of generational wealth. Speaking of real estate, the FTC fined an online real estate business called Open Door $62 million for deceiving consumers about how much money they could save by selling their home to Open Door as opposed to selling it on the open market. The FTC also announced that it is exploring a rule to crack down on junk fees. Junk fees are unnecessary, unavoidable, or surprise charges that inflate costs while adding little to no value. Speaking of unseen charges, the FTC filed suit against Drizzly, the online alcohol marketplace owned by Uber, for not disclosing how they're using their data of customers, and also, oopsie, letting a data breach get all of the info onto the dark web. One notable development here is that the CEO himself is going to be personally liable for some of the violations. And speaking of a tech mess up, the SEC, oh my, just found out there was a technological error on their site that was going on since June of last year, where not all comments have come through and been reviewed. So they're extending certain comment periods, and we'll see how they fix that conundrum. Speaking of the SEC, they fined Mattel, the toy company, for $3.5 million for misstatements in its third and fourth quarter of 2017 financial statements. Separately, the SEC is going after a former audit partner at PwC to figure out if he engaged in improper professional conduct in relation to it. The SEC also charged Kronos Group, which is a Canadian cannabis company, also bad accounting errors in relation to their 2019 public filings in the US. And again, the former chief commercial officer is being roped in personally for fraud and aiding and abetting the company's violations. But because Kronos self-reported their error as soon as they discovered it, how bad it was and some of the crazy things the guy was doing, the company itself is not being fined. But they do need to hire an independent consultant to review their internal accounting practices and controls. The Fed put out a report noting that one great thing about the pandemic was that people actually saved money, like in their real savings accounts. But now we're back to normal and everyone's eating their savings. The Federal Insurance Office, which is a department within Treasury, plans to ask certain property and casualty insurers for data about their current and historical underwriting data on homeowners insurance. The data is going to help the FIO's study on climate-related exposures and their effects on insurance availability. New Jersey introduced a bill that would require the State Division of Consumer Affairs to establish and maintain an up-to-date and public registry of data brokers in New Jersey. I'm not sure what kind of an impact that will have, but it's certainly interesting. And finally, according to Bloomberg, California is poised to overtake Germany as the world's fourth largest economy. Wild. And that's it this week for Regulators. Imagine all of the world's regulators at your fingertips. 25% of our customers use Regulators for compliance, but all the rest use it to save money or make money. See you next Wednesday.